Hey guys, continuing Iamblichus' Exhortation to Philosophy, chapter 7. He says, this is the last video in this chapter, so it's the last few paragraphs in the actual chapter. He says, man desires life. Well, first he says, what is life? He says, life is made up of two things, activity and perception. He said, without perception, life is nothing. And I guess he means we can't see any activity, so there's literally nothing. So we need the perception. And I assume he means that without activity, there is no movement. So again, we cannot see anything, and there's nothing. So this is nice, that makes sense. So he says, man desires life. He says, but why? To gain knowledge. So the man, the soul, is seeking knowledge. And he gets it through life, through this interplay of these things, through constant activity and constant perception of these activities. He says, where's the true proof of this? The proof again is in the power of the sight. The man wants sight as the most valuable sense. If we could choose, we would choose sight out of all the senses. Why? Because it allows us to perceive the most activity, essentially, and most difference. So he says it's the least erroneous of all the senses. And I added it's the most informative in terms of difference. We can see much more. We can see more activity. This is how I understand it. In what is happening. For example, really far away, a car is moving. If you do not have sight, if a car is really far, you will not hear it, you will not smell it, you cannot touch it. But with sight, you can see movement. So what does that tell us? You get some kind of knowledge. There is a car moving. This is how example I understand. He doesn't give that example of a car, obviously. There were no cars then. Yeah. He said this alone proves that man wants knowledge. Which means he wants true knowledge, because that is a higher knowledge. This knowledge of physical reality is small compared to wisdom and higher true knowledge. So because of this, we can see that the man, there is an instinct in the man, there is a desire for wisdom. And I understand it as because people do not understand this process. They stop at this level, at the level of the senses. They do not go higher. But when we see, this is how I understand it. Now this is my interpretation. But when we see things, when we see beautiful scenery, for example, we are kind of enjoying it. We're at peace. We get enjoyment from it. We get a kind of a happiness. But this is on the level of the senses. Surely we'd be even happier if we could get even more knowledge of what is happening. If we could see even more things, not just with the eyes, but also with the mind. Much more beautiful things. This is how I understand it. And this is where we go into wisdom and true knowledge of higher things. And philosophy is what teaches us those things. The path to this. So it makes sense. That's it. Thank you for watching this. Next video we start with chapter 8. Click on the video if a video appears now. And I'll just meditate for 15 seconds so that a video will appear. Because YouTube has to wait for 15 seconds.